RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Today on Indianapolis This Week, new revelations about personal email accounts that might have been used to conduct government business or any federal laws broken. Plus, a tweet from a congressman and a handwritten note that's sparking a lot of discussion online. But first, Congressman Jim Banks says he supports President Trump's decision to eliminate DACA or the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. He says Congress, not the executive branch, has the constitutional authority to set the country's immigration policy. I asked him what he'd tell the nearly 18,000 Dreamers in Indiana who are wondering how this will impact them.
This is the opportunity for the Congress to step up and do their job, and I believe that the Congress will. So whether it's addressing those 18,000 that you speak of or addressing the larger issues related to securing our borders, from building the wall to providing for better border security, as well as making it easier and simpler for those to come to the country legally. There are important immigration reform packages that have been introduced in this Congress, like the RAISE Act that Senator Tom Cotton introduced recently, which I largely support, that would modernize the immigration process, the legal immigration processes in our country. That's all part of a broader debate that will occur over the next 6 months, and that would be my message to those who are interested or impacted by this subject, that we need to make it fairer and easier for those to come here legally and modernize the immigration process, and we need to make it far more difficult for those who come to the United States illegally, and we shouldn't reward those who break the law to come to the United States. So that's all part of a significant debate that will occur over the next 6 months that I look forward to.
I also asked Congressman Banks about the president's decision to side with Democrats on crafting a deal for the debt ceiling. Here's his response.
We voted on the House floor. I was one of 90 who voted against the President Trump, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi deal that raised the debt limit and combined that issue with the Hurricane Harvey aid relief package. It also included a number of other provisions that stand against my conservative principles. I've said since the day I was elected, if we're going to raise the debt limit, which I'm not fully against, then we should do it while also reforming the spending and budgeting processes that have led us to a $20 trillion national debt. And the president's deal with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi didn't go there at all. And that's why I voted against the deal, as did most of the other members of the Hoosier delegation, because I found it to be irresponsible and not addressing the underlying issues that have led to a $20 trillion national debt. So it was a disappointing deal, and I voted against it.
A couple of constituents are sending a message to a United States congressman by controversial means. Take a look. A volunteer for the Planned Parenthood Action Fund personally delivered a signed letter in this box of Sour Patch Kids to Congressman Larry Bouchon's office in Terre Haute. The message reads, "Kids are sweet, but forced birth leaves a sour taste." The sender signed the bottom with the hashtag "I support Planned Parenthood." Planned Parenthood Action Fund volunteer Kylie Carather says it was her idea. She says she used the term forced birth to remind Bouchon that, quote, removing access to a safe legal procedure is essentially forcing women to carry pregnancies to term that otherwise may not have been. Bouchon called the package and the message a shocking and disgusting attempt to devalue human life. He tweeted a photo of the box of candy with the sender's names visible and wrote, "Regardless of your views on this issue, how can anyone defend this sickening and callous disregard for the sanctity of human life?" A spokesman for Bouchon says the political message isn't the issue. He says the issue is the way it was delivered, adding the congressman found it to be in poor taste.
You know what? I've been saying, let's just beat her on November 8th. But you know what? No. You know what? I'm starting to agree with you, I'll tell you.
The chants of "lock her up" are still prominent at rallies where President Trump speaks, as they were during the campaign. Trump and his supporters claim that Hillary Clinton should have been charged with a crime for using a personal email server while she was Secretary of State. Now there's word that some members of the panel created by Trump to investigate claims of widespread voter fraud may be using personal email accounts to conduct government business. This status report was filed in a lawsuit against the president's Commission on Election Integrity. Vice President Mike Pence chairs that panel. The lawyers who are suing say they were told by the Justice Department attorneys that some members of the voter fraud panel had conducted business using personal email accounts. They claim that's a violation of federal law requiring any business of a presidential commission to be conducted using email accounts issued by the federal government. Attorneys defending the panel are not disputing that personal email accounts might have been used by some members, but the lawyers argue that no laws were broken. They say the type of email account isn't relevant to the lawsuit's contention that some of the panel's records had not been made public. You might recall that Pence was also criticized for using a private AOL email account for state business while he was governor of Indiana. He turned over 13 boxes full of copies of emails from that account to the state earlier this year. Indiana Secretary of State Connie Lawson is a member of the voter fraud panel. Her office is referring all questions to the Justice Department. A spokesperson for the DOJ issued a brief statement saying the department declines to comment beyond the joint status report. We reached out to Vice President Pence's office for comment as well, but did not hear back. Up ahead, the president sides with Democrats on a deal on the debt ceiling and that controversial box of candy to Congressman Bouchon. Our political insiders are here to weigh in. Coming up next.
Rallies and checkers. Fast foodies know the deal.
Welcome back. Our political insiders are here. We have WIBC State House correspondent Eric Berman, Republican Kyle Walker, and Democrat Jamar Cobb-Denard. Let's start with the debt ceiling discussion. President Trump sided with Democrats on this. How does this impact his relationship with congressional Republicans?
Well, from everything we're hearing and reading, not very well. You had Republicans walking out of that meeting a little stunned that A, there was a deal, and B, not with them. Whether this means anything going forward, it's tough to say. I mean, I think what might be more significant in the long run is that same day the president had the speech in North Dakota, which he showed a little bit of, and had praise for Heidi Heitkamp, who's a potentially vulnerable Democratic senator in a Republican state. And if you're Mitch McConnell, you're thinking, wait a second, he's calling Heidi Heitkamp up on stage and he's lobbing tweets against me and Jeff Flake. What's going on here?
Yeah, you know, I don't think it's a long-term issue. I do think it's the president asserting himself, showing some discontent with the speed in which things are happening in Congress and his ability to, or willingness to be bipartisan in his approach. And I think it also gives a little bit of cover to the Republican leaders in both the House and the Senate with their membership, so that they understand that the president is not going to simply wait for a one-party decision to be made. He's going to be willing to talk to both parties, be bipartisan, which I think is what the public and voters at large really want to see out of their leader.
If you're Mitch McConnell, though, do you forget this? Does this come back to haunt the president down the road when he needs support of these folks?
You know, I think we'll see, but I do think that, you know, it is a strong move to again assert himself as being willing to find a bipartisan solution. And I think we should look at what this vote was, too. I mean, it was a very important disaster relief funding. There was no time for delay. The president acted. I think long-term it will be fine among Republicans, and I think you know, again, I think it opens the door for further bipartisan conversation.
Jamar, any impact to Democrats?
So from a Democrat perspective, I'll tell you, Donald Trump isn't the Republicans' president. Really, he's here to make deals, and that's what he did with this deal. He saw an opportunity to not handle this fiscal issue now, but he may have to deal with a big mess later. But he also saw an opportunity to wrap this thing around natural disasters that are occurring across this country. From my opinion, you know, for Democrats, it may give them a leg up. It also shows a president that's willing to work with them. But for Donald Trump, he got the deal done, and that's what this is about.
Vice President Pence voted against raising the debt ceiling while he served in Congress. What does this mean for him? What position is he now in?
Well, Barack Obama voted against raising the debt ceiling when he was in Congress and it was a Republican in the White House. I mean, the debt ceiling has been a football for years, regardless of which party's in power. The interesting thing that the president sort of dangled out there, and we'll see if this actually comes to pass, is why are we even doing this? Why do we have a debt limit, what somebody called debt limit kabuki? And if he actually goes forward with an attempt to say, okay, there's no debt limit, we're just going to deal with this, that could become a more interesting debate. Until then, I think we're going to continue to have these taking it right up to the deadline and parties casting votes against whoever the opposition party is.
Well, I think from a Republican perspective, it's an important conversation to have at each of these decision points about the debt limit as to, how do we want to function as a country? I mean, clearly there's an interest, I think, by all parties to ensure that debts are paid, but it does raise the question of spending and how is that put in check as it relates to the amount of debt. And so I don't think that eliminating debt limits entirely and just having sort of a blank check is the right solution. I think Republicans generally agree with that, and because I do think it limits that future debate that is very important for the financial health of the country for the long run.
Debt limits aside, Vice President Pence is a master politician, and he's going to continue to support Donald Trump to make sure that he puts himself in position for whatever the future holds for him, and I think that his move and continue to support President Trump is a good one.
Congressman Bouchon, we just ran the story about the box of candy that was sent to his office from Planned Parenthood supporters. That message from them, appropriate or out of line, and what do you make of his response to include their names visibly in the tweet?
One thing, I'll be curious what the folks to my left think on this. But I don't feel like you can tell people what to feel, and if he says he's offended by it, then he's offended by it. This didn't strike me in the same way. It's not funny, it's not clever, but it is what it is to go as far as he did. I mean, if you agree with Larry Bouchon on abortion, then you probably do find it offensive. If you agree with the woman who sent it on abortion, then you probably think, hey, one for our side. I just look at this and I think, it's the Twitterization of American discourse, where can we get a good one-liner going? Can we get a good meme? Let's start by making it a good meme.
Look, I think Congressman Bouchon was right. I mean, I think it's callous. I think it was in very poor taste. And I do think that, I think it also, when it brings up this idea of a forced birth, which is something that, Planned Parenthood or one of their volunteers has made up, really what they're talking about is they want to have a debate on the government's role in funding birth control and other items of the like. This was completely out of line. I think that it was. It really did draw a question to their tactics and what their real intent is, and I think it was, callous at best.
Bouchon's reaction, in my opinion, was a little over the top. One, to even post it at all. I assume that a staff or an intern may have even put it up there, right? But at the end of the day, for somebody who votes against affordable health care for children and women across the country, but has, this vitriol to a box of candy sent to him, is really surprising to me at most.
Well, but I don't think there's anything wrong with him listing their names. They were clearly proud of this, and to your point, they thought they were clever. They thought they were humorous, perhaps, but it wasn't taken that way by the congressman. I don't think it advanced their message. Again, I don't think it was even. It didn't even really clearly articulate what their message was. It sort of muddied the water as to the healthcare issues that you brought up. So I mean, I think it was just a misstep from them.
That'll have to be our last word. We'll keep it at that. Next up on Indianapolis this week, a sweet trip if you have a sweet tooth. Erica Fly with a tour of the biggest chocolate and ice cream shop in central Indiana. It's our latest stop.
Working for you.
I'm Erica Fly, and 6 in the City is making a stop in Anderson, where they're making homemade ice cream and candy.
I'm Randy Good. Welcome to Good's Candy Shop.
It has all sorts of homemade candy. The ice cream is super good.
It's a sweet tooth destination. What are you going to order?
I'm not sure yet. There's so many options.
All in just one location along West 53rd Street in Anderson.
We have the largest ice cream candy shop in all of central Indiana. Not to mention that the product is off the chain crazy good.
Randy Andy Good purchased the store from his parents in 1992. So it's a family thing.
Yes, it goes back to about 1940. It was my great aunt in Muncie, Indiana, who had a little candy shop in her basement.
Candy making has come a long way.
When I began, we were still hand dipping. I hand dipped every single piece for about 8 years.
And even now, with heavy-duty machinery.
A lot of hand work, a lot of stirring, constant stirring to make good toffee. Fresh caramels that we make and hand wrap every single day, fudge and chocolates and brittles and crunches. Yeah, we do it all.
There are original family recipes, and Randy's constantly creating new ones.
One day I woke up and just said, you know what I need to do? I need to start making my own root beer.
Oh my gosh.
Goods, ice cream, and candy is the best around.
Fair to say you're a kid in a candy store.
I am a kid in a candy store. Absolutely. I just love it.
And even though Randy has created all kinds of ice cream flavors to choose from, the best seller is still vanilla. Want a behind-the-scenes look for yourself? You can book a group tour at Goods. And if you can't make it to the Anderson store, you can also order candy online. We'll have a link to Goods at the hot button at theindychannel.com.
A pioneering astronaut visits Indianapolis to deliver a powerful message at the Indy Women in Tech Championship Summit. Don't doubt, dare. In a one-on-one conversation, I asked Dr. Mae Jemison about the project she's currently spearheading called 100-Year Starship.
The idea behind it is to make sure that we have the capabilities for human travel beyond our solar system to another star within 100 years. The capabilities, not a launch date. Why the capabilities? Because all the problems that we face in a successful journey getting outside of our solar system with humans are the same things that we face to survive as a species on this planet. Why is that? Because really, when you look at it, the Earth is a big, interstellar ship in many ways. It's self-contained. All of our resources are here. Those are things we have to do. So we have to learn how to generate tremendous amounts of energy. We need to do that. We have to do it safely. We have to be able to store it and control it. We need to understand ecosystems, right? We need to understand our microbiomes in our gut, what allows our plants to grow in the soil. Right? Because you need to feed yourself on the way on the trip, and we certainly need to understand that here on Earth. We have to understand how to deal with waste and garbage and pollutants. We have to understand health. We have to understand, the fact that we are part of this larger system that we couldn't live without. We can't live without the microbiomes in our gut. We can't live without the plants that inhabit this planet with us. And so 100-Year Starship is there because the successful journey beyond our solar system mirrors everything we need to do on this planet, including how to behave.
Almost 25 years ago, you were the first woman of color to travel into space. What does this anniversary mean to you?
So it's really interesting. When I think about 25 years ago and going into space, so there's this really big moment where I'm really excited and smiling because it's something that I've wanted to do for years. And at the same time, it's about what you do with your place at the table. I think that doing something like that gives you a platform. And so what do you do with it? For me, it was about including other people in it. And when I look back, I want to know that 25 years ago that I started something and I continued a journey. And what I've wanted to do is to connect people around the world to space, to doing things that are really beneficial to people worldwide. And also for us not to be afraid to really take on big challenges.
Governor Eric Holcomb is almost halfway through a 9-day trip to Japan. He's traveling with more than 30 business and economic development leaders from around the state. Japan is one of Indiana's largest foreign investors. Holcomb says he hopes to strengthen relationships with Japanese companies. His schedule includes meetings with Subaru and Toyota.